And so, one heart, one being, one self, one truth, one divine wholeness, to which all beings belong. The same essence is the essence of all. Let us meet in the essence knowing, in the being that is the one truth, being the being that is true. Underneath all that manipulation of the mental gymnastics, constantly trying to pull the attention, constantly trying to dance itself into more delusion. Let us meet underneath all of that. In this one truth, the one being that just is. To fall into the longing, that the longing exists is the finding. That the longing exists is the finding. When we come to the longing and we feel that magnetic pull of the longing, and we just fall into the longing, surrender into the longing, where the sense of seeker finds itself, where there is no longer anyone looking for anything, and the finding is not a thing, that what is just simply is, and you are that. And the knowing is the one heart, the one self, the one being that just simply is. And every being is longing to remember divine wholeness. But wholeness is not whole as long as wholeness is imagined to be something. Where all sense of object and subject disappears, wholeness is here. No one is wholeness. No one is wholeness, right? It is not someone who is the wholeness. Wholeness is not an experience. In the absence of someone, the simplicity of being is divine wholeness. Where there is no one aware of something, there is just simply what is, and this is the truth of who you are. So as these words come, it is just to feel the resonance. Where the resonance is alive, the knowing of this truth is already enlivened. It is to fall into the resonance, fall into the longing, fall into the magnetic pull, because that pull is the self itself longing for itself. It is the wholeness pulling all of itself, shaking itself into remembering. There has never been any separation. There has never been division. And the seeing through of that illusion is in the resonance of knowing. this one truth, the one being, one wholeness that just is. Understanding dawns when intelligence itself receives this wisdom as a resonance of divine remembering and sparks in recognition. This is what I am. This is the truth. And in this sparking, there is no longer a projecting energy outward looking for what is true. The habit to project the energy outwards in response to the longing, to constantly project outwards, longing for something, longing for some kind of worldly fulfillment, looking for a conclusion. And yet there are no conclusions. There is no beginning, there is no end. The finding is not a finding of something. The discovery is that you have always been yourself, that the essence nature is divine wholeness. And where there is the knowing of this, it is to fall into the knowing. The knowing is an aliveness. It is the aliveness of being, simply being, and knowing itself. It is not an experience that comes and goes. It just is. And so true understanding spontaneously happens in the vast openness, in the emptiness, where there is this alive intelligence of the innermost being recognizing itself, sparking in the knowing of itself. It is not an happening that we can understand with the mind. We can have no expectations. We cannot make an ambition of this. It is just to be here, to simply be here just as you are. Not to create moods, not to try to create the right environment, because nothing has anything to do with this truth that just is. The being is untouched. The being is unmoving, unchanging. The felt sense of simple existence. It's not your existence. It is existence itself. Existence itself brings us to the opening of the vastness. We could say to the vast open field of pure consciousness, to the timeless, eternal oneness of being. And when we open to this vast open field of consciousness, everything is transforming and shifting and deepening within consciousness itself. It is no longer in the realm of experience, even though the deepening seems to be a changing experience. It is no longer in the realm of experience. It is in the realm of consciousness, deepening and falling into itself. We could say, as this is integrated and embodied, there is a felt sense of the lived experience changing. But the lived experience is not the same as the coming and going experience. It is the direct experience of your true essence nature embodied on the surface of life that is shifting to be a deeper and deeper, more profound and real emanation of divine wholeness. Nothing is happening to the person. Personhood disappears into the knowing of presence. And in the knowing of presence as being what you are, there is clarity. Clarity is like a dawning. Clarity is not of the world. It is not of the mind. Clarity is utter freedom from the mental realm. Clarity is the simplicity of being. Clarity is just love. Let's talk about love. Love, where there is no division. Love that is without condition. Love the freedom. Love the true power. Love what all beings are longing for. And yet the search in the external is fruitless. Could even say disappointing, because we put our hope in the temporary, the transient. But that longing for love is a longing for self, longing to know yourself as love. In our learned, conditioned way of being, we have learned to be so dry, so tight, so contracted, so far away from what real love is, so far away from what true nature is. And yet the fact that we are longing for that is that, right? The seeker is the sought. The longing is the finding. The only reason that we are longing for love, for unchanging, undisturbable happiness, is because it is the essence nature and it is already known. This is why to come to the longing, it starts to bring an aliveness. To come to the longing, we start to feel the fire, the pull, the aliveness, and hear the nectar, hear that which lubricates and carries us into the flow of consciousness, where we are not stiff and dry and holding tight to our beliefs and our concepts and ideas. We come to the fire of the heart, the pull into the wild abandon, where we are willing to give it all, true surrender, true devotion, where we are willing to just give it all to God, to Ma, to the mother, without knowing what that is or what that means. But in our longing, we can feel that pull to just let go of the charade, of the facade, of the illusion of separation, of the tightness, of the dryness, and just fall into the deep well that is the bliss of being. We can never know what this means until we find ourselves swimming, floating in the abyss, in the beauty. Cannot imagine what surrender is until surrender happens. We imagine maybe one surrender, two surrenders, but we do not with the mind imagine that life is perpetual surrender, that surrendering in and in and in is the flow of life living itself, that we do not come to the end of surrender, that we know we are heading deeper and deeper in when surrender is the stuff of life, when surrender is the flow of life, and perpetual surrender is carrying us in. It is by the flow of the tears of our surrender into what we cannot fathom. Divine surrender is what carries us into a deeper and deeper devotion. What is devoted to what? It is pure devotion. Pure devotion is the flow of divinity, of divine wholeness, surrendering into itself. This is how it sustains itself. It collapses in every moment completely into itself. This is wholeness. Wholeness is self-sustaining, right? Wholeness does not need anything from the external, of course. Wholeness just is. It is self-sustaining in the knowing of itself, but not in a way that can be imagined. So when we come to surrender, when we surrender into the longing, there is a letting go. There is a giving up, a not knowing. We cannot do surrender. We can just bring ourselves from doing to being. And in the felt sense of being, we are just here in the felt sense of being the presence with the open-hearted prayer to be taken. The open-hearted prayer that says, take me into you. Let me know only you. To be one with divine wholeness, to know without question the oneness with divine wholeness, in absolutely no way separate from divine wholeness, in no way separate from Ma, in no way separate from God. And the knowing of this arises spontaneously as we follow the longing. We follow the longing deeper and deeper, and we know that when there is a longing for more, to go deeper, to be carried, that is never external. It's never something that we can understand, and it's never something that we can feed in the external. That pull in is just inviting a deeper and deeper surrender into our own heart, into the being, into the knowing of what is, into the resonance that is the aliveness, and the aliveness is the flow. We come to the flow, the dynamism, the aliveness of the self knowing itself and ever flowing in itself. And it is this dynamism that carries us deeper. So we know the silence, the stillness, the vast infinite peace that is undisturbable, never ever changes. And we find in the knowing of the silence, there is a dynamic aliveness. The knowing itself is alive, and the dynamism is the flow. And the flow is what carries, let's say, consciousness deeper into the knowing of its own consciousness. Cannot understand this with the mind. It is the intelligence itself that recognizes its own wisdom. And as these words come, just to fall in as if letting go into the river and being carried, falling into the river, taking the divine taxi that Ma Shakti is flowing as, flowing in the river into the ocean of bliss, letting go, not holding on to anything, just saying yes and yes and yes. There is nothing external to be devoted to. There is nothing external to surrender to. The surrender is into yourself. The devotion is to yourself. The pull, the longing is for yourself. And to fall into the longing is to find yourself here, now. Feel the aliveness. Feel the blazing fire of the heart that is just calling itself into itself. It is a call into yourself, not a call out there. The call to know your oneness. You already are that oneness, but to be consciously aware of the oneness is to be the awake field. To be in the remembering of union is to know what the longing is for. Belonging. You be the longing and you find what you belong to. You belong to yourself. You belong to God, to the Mother, to divine wholeness. Does not matter what words we use, does not matter which words resonate, but essentially we will all come in divine timing into the utmost submission, and we will all come to know what Mother, what Ma truly is. Does not matter which words carry us here. The glow of radiant wholeness will spark itself alive, and it will bring forward the remembering. It will bring forward the remembering of what this longing is truly for. The deep secret of every heart to come into the remembering of Mother, the Mother of all existence. She that is non-existent, uncreated perfection. And from that non-existent, uncreated, timeless perfection, she is the ultimate force and power. She is the supreme, and she only has that power for all of this to appear. That we can dream the dream of life is her creation. Without her, that would not be possible. And in divine timing, we come to know what this is. But it does not matter which words carry us, which words resonate. We are being carried to the source of the source, into a purity and innocence and immaculate divine wholeness, and remembering recognition recognizing what we have always known, opening to the mystical vision, the clear seeing. The clear seeing is the seeing with no seer and no seen. Clear seeing is the knowing of what you are, where there is no more object. What is being sought is not something. It is this. It is this. This moment undressed of story, this moment undressed of concept, beliefs, and ideas. This moment just as it is. This is what we are longing for. We could say utter simplicity. To be this moment here as this moment with absolutely not a single movement of projection, not a single movement of thinking about, evaluating, narrating, commentating upon the moment according to me. This moment, just as it is, empty, empty of story, empty of experience, leaves all that is true. And what is true is this. Nothing needs to be stripped. Nothing needs to be removed. Nothing needs to be changed. We are just invited to be here so fully, so that all projections are pulled all the way in, sucked all the way in, so that presence is supreme. We let go of all that the mind thinks is valuable, and we find true value in the self, in wisdom, true wisdom. And this wisdom is the self knowing itself, the being itself. The surrender in every moment into the longing is a surrender into the knowing. Only one, only one, only one, only God, only God, only God, only Ma, only Ma, only Ma. Without knowing, of course, with the mind what that means, but somehow to feel the alive resonance that there is only one, and that one is what is, that one is love. Only love, only love, only love. Does not matter the words that we use. For every moment to be in such utter devotion that there is like a constant mantra playing. Only one, only one, only this, only God. This too, this too, this too. That we never ever leave what we are longing for. That we are constantly holding this truth in the heart. And we have such a pristine awareness, so illuminated in awareness that we are aware of all that is moving and changing. And we see the moving changing as the dance of divine wholeness, a divine orchestration. And in that we know that all that is seen, all that is happening, this too has to be the one, the same one. And so we stop with the projections. We stop playing out the cycle of karma where we are blaming and projecting and getting involved in the story of right or wrong, good and bad, this way, that way. We recognize in the deep surrender in every moment that the way things are, it's God, it's a divine orchestration. It can only be this way. And only when we come to this depth of surrender can we truly escape from the cycle of karma, the play, the cycle of misery, of attachment and aversion. Only when we stop playing out the drama and we recognize there are no opposites here. The opposites are created by the mind, that this is the one, just this, just this. And then our work in holy devotion is to keep receiving God in everything, to see God, to see Mother in everything. And as we commit to see her in everything, we start to see her in everything. We start to know her in everything because we stop the habit of separating and dividing and fragmenting. And every moment that we are receiving the grace, we are in surrender, we are in devotion, not even as someone, but just as the flow of consciousness that naturally is constantly collapsing into itself again and again and again in perpetual surrender. And what we are speaking of here, it is not a doing, it is not a project. It is to feel the resonance, and where you feel the resonance, feel it as a fire in the heart, and it might come forward with a yes, 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 this is the way. And the mind might then create a little project pathway, a to-do list, but do not worry about that. Do not create it as a doing. Let the pull of your longing carry you deeper into devotion, carry you inward into yourself, into a deeper and deeper submission, because that submission is into the divine wholeness. It's not external, it's not an idea, it is a movement into yourself, which in every moment invites a depth of surrender. And then you hear, let's say you hear your true prayer arise inside you. It's not created with the mind. You hear the prayer. You hear like your divine mantra arise inside you that plays again and again and again. And of course, there will be forgetting. But as soon as forgetting is seen in the eye of illuminated awareness, remembering happens. And again, it starts. This heart of light is yours. This heart of light is yours. Breathe me into you. Take me into you. Let me know only you. Carry me into you. Breathe me all the way. Take me into you. This heart of light is yours. This heart of light is yours. Your own prayer will arise in the spacious garden of surrender, where you are one with divine wholeness, where you are one with divinity. The knowing of the hows, it just opens up. It is not a mental understanding. It is not something you can Google. There is something so much more divine inside you. And it is to trust that when there is a turning inward, in the turning inward, you discover that which is alive in the knowing inside you. And in that alive knowing inside you, there is a guidance, and the guidance is the flow. It's the flow of devotion. It's what carries you deeper into yourself. You see, this is not for the mind. This is not for the me to get something for the me. This is about surrender. And surrender is the surrender of the me. It's the surrender of the one that thinks they know, the one that wants to be in control, the one that wants to understand. It is the utter surrender of all of that into divine not knowing. As these words come, where you feel the aliveness inside, where you feel the heart saying, yes, 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 it's because this truth is already alive like a fire inside you. There is no way, there is no instruction. We can even say there is no teaching. We're here in truth. True truth is before the teaching. Clear seeing is before the way. We could say that the true and only way is to go into yourself and to let go of the need for ways and instructions, right? We use the pointings, right? But the pointings are not instructions. The pointings are alive and intimate in this moment. The pointings are the self speaking to itself, and the pointings are the knowing of the heart of itself, enlivened, right? So the pointing is only ever fresh in the moment. It's not something that can be carried over. It is to receive it and let it go. Receive it and let it go. Receive it and find out where you are. And where you are is where the being is, the felt sense of being, the felt sense of where you are, what you are, being here. This is the truth of who you are. In the silence, in the stillness, this moment, without a story, this moment, empty of experience, this moment, openness, simplicity, the felt sense of simply being. And here you are, just as you have always been. Do not need to look with the mind or try to understand. It is just a spontaneous arriving in a felt sense of knowing, of simply being, where there is no one aware of the being. There's no one here. There's just being. And this is the simplicity that is whole and pure and innocent. It is not an object. It is emptiness, openness, simplicity. Just as you are right now. Has nothing to do with the mind, the character, the personality. Nothing needs to change. It is just to recognize that you are not, that you are before everything. You are before everything. And the felt sense of realizing what is being pointed to brings a dawning, an aliveness, where the knowing is simply clear knowing. There is no one who knows. There is just knowing. And once this recognition starts to ignite, there is a pulling back of all of the energies that want to move to the external, looking, seeking, trying to find. Because in the recognition, in the glimpse, the taste of yourself, there is a nectar that is so alive and intoxicating that all you want is to drink the nectar of yourself, to be carried more deeply into yourself. And hear the ever deepening surrender. Hear the wild abandon of my heart into your heart. Hear the longing to be one with what you truly belong to. Hear the calling out to Ma, to God, to the beloved, whatever words. Hear the calling out. Hear the prayer to be taken all the way into the oneness of what is, into the wholeness, the holy, holy wholeness. And yet, so too, there is such a naturalness, such a simplicity, stripped of story, stripped of name and form, stripped of all that the mind thinks is important. There is a naturalness and a reverence for everything, devotion to everything, life in utter devotion to itself, life living as life itself, in the oneness, in total harmony with itself. No resistance, no attachment, no suffering, right? This moment, just to feel the truth of what these words are pointing to as the truth of who you are. Just to feel the truth of who you are, what you are. That the confirmation is in the innermost being. The confirmation is in the heart of hearts. And the heart of hearts is the self. It is the true self, the true one that you are. And this one is everywhere, infinite and unbounded, timeless, simple, openness. There are no edges to what you are. There is no story to what you are. There is the simple, simple remembering. This is what you have always, always been. This has always been known. It has always been like this. Timeless, eternal presence, remembering itself before everything. Only when what is longed for is a stronger pull than what the me wants, does this knowing really take root. There can be a longing, there can be a strong longing, but if that longing is constantly pushed away in favor of what the me wants, then what will be lived is what the me wants, and the cycle of karma will continue, and so too will the suffering. That is for sure, because the cycle of karma is a cycle of suffering and misery, ever changing, the ups and downs, right? The pleasure and the pain, the attachment and the aversion. Only when we escape that fully through knowing the being, the essence nature of what we are, we can have tastes and glimpses and experiences, but it will only root deeply when our longing is so illuminated and strong that the pull into this pure devotion, this pure surrender, carries us inward. This is for sure. We come to the divine through turning to the divine again and again and again. There is an utter simplicity in, let's say, the true way. The true way is just to turn again and again and again to what you are longing for, to not leave the focus of intensity, of the pull of what is longed for, and to turn again and again and again to fall in and in and in. It's saying yes and yes and yes and yes. And it is a constant surrender of pure flow of devotion. And this is what brings alive the dryness of our human condition. The human condition is so tight and dry that we have to come alive in our longing. We have to come to a sense of wild abandon, where we could say the true longing, the true passion of the heart is allowed to lubricate the way so that we can start to drink the nectar. Otherwise, our arrogance and ignorance will continue to perpetuate. It will continue to drive the show, and so too will misery continue to circle. The simplicity, the guidance that we are offered is to keep turning again and again and again, to keep falling in and in and in. Clarity has no separation. Clarity has no divisive thoughts. Clarity has no mind. Clarity has no fragmentation, right? So we have to be able to discern between heart truth, which is pure clarity, and mind truth, which is a delusional idea, right? We have to have the discernment, the discrimination again and again and again, because the mind is so manipulative, it's so cunning, and it's so persistent. And that is the grace of coming to a place where we create a reflection that will offer pointings of where the manipulation and the delusion is trying to take hold, because otherwise it will keep trying to perpetuate and make itself known and try to keep taking a dominant position, right? A mind that thinks it knows is never going to be free, right? Freedom is freedom from a mind. Freedom is freedom from delusion. Freedom just is. It is the being just as it is. We are longing for perfect love and for perfect happiness. And perfect love and happiness are right here in the being. We taste it. We taste it, and yet still the mental gymnastics can continue to pull the attention. It is not easy. We are shifting discordant patterns in consciousness that have learned to play habitually again and again and again. And the will of the me and the mind to stay alive is strong, right? So we have to have such a willingness to discern, to see, to discriminate, and then the humility and the courage to not continue to perpetuate the collaboration with the mind, with the imbalance, with the illusion of separation. This is the battlefield, right, that gets spoken about in the Vedic text. The battlefield is the battle with your own mind, right? True clear seeing, being a true seer, is the willingness to sit and watch the mind, watch the tricks and the turbulence and the gymnastics and the manipulation, the willingness to see clearly how the mind will do anything but not to give into it, right? This is what these rishis of old would be sitting in caves for many years in deep, deep meditation, watching the mind, let's say coming to know the nature of the mind in order to be completely freed of the mind, can only be completely freed of the mind when we are not dominated by its habitual nature, when we realize that it has no power. So we can come to clear glimpses and knowing of the being that we are, but we cannot come to the fullness and wholeness of our divinity, the true oneness, as long as the mind is continually trying to pull the attention and win the game, right? So there are different areas to this opening, to this devotion. And one of them is to watch the mind and to have this discrimination between what is real and unreal, and to really feel that the power of the longing for reality and to live this divine reality, to collapse all the way into this divine reality, is a bigger longing and a greater pull than the pull of that which is unreal, right? We have to come to recognize what is true. And what is true is never a story. There is never a story of truth. That is the mind's misunderstanding. There are few that will go the distance because the allure of the worldly is so strong, and we go as far as we can go in this lifetime. But let us know that the purpose of a human life is to fall in love with love, to find the spark of the divine within and follow it. Follow it as far as you can, right? To keep falling in and in and in, and to know that this moment here now is the holy moment to know yourself, to not delay, to not put it off, to not think that you have all this time, to surrender time into timelessness right now. There is such a richness to what is happening in the field here now, because there are beings here that are so ready to surrender more deeply. And there are beings here that want to fight, the ego sense, the mind that wants to fight. So this field is so rich. And yet the power of the longing that is here, the power of the pull that is here, to surrender more deeply in, to be carried, to be taken, to really, really fall into what true surrender is, to really feel the essence of what true submission is and what it takes. It takes everything. It takes everything to be nothing, to be no one. It takes everything. It takes the willingness to hand it all over and not need to understand or have anything for the me be the way the me wants it. And what tends to happen is that the way life plays and whatever feels challenging starts to be realized to be, this is here to free everything. And so this is what I want. This that feels hard and challenging and intense, this is what I long for. I long for anything that carries me deeper in to the grace of the divine. I long for anything and everything that will strip away the remaining delusion and let me know what is true surrender, what is true devotion. May I be granted true devotion, pure devotion in this life. May I be granted true surrender in this life. May I be freed from the habits of the mind to manipulate constantly for the collaboration with the me. May life humble me into true humility, because it is only in true humility that we discover what divine wholeness is. There is no one that is humble. It does not exist. A humble me. Yes, let that me be so humbled that there is no more me and only you, whatever you are, great unfathomable gorgeousness that is the shining light that is in this heart. May I be carried all the way into whatever you are, knowing that whatever you are, I am, and the longing of this heart is only to know that, and only that. That the purpose of our gatherings is just to fan the flames that are already ignited inside, and whether that is a tiny spark or whether it is a blazing fire, the purpose of our gatherings is to keep fanning that fire, to keep that fire blazing, so that your own holiness, the pull of your own holiness, pulls you into yourself. And then the illumination, the clarity, the clear seeing, the peace, the innocence, the incredible beauty of the being simply being and knowing itself, ever flowing more deeply into itself. To feel the resonance, the aliveness, the fire of the heart, the longing, the pull, or even if that is a whisper in the silence, to recognize the aliveness, the longing, whichever way it reveals itself, to recognize that that is the grace that, let's say, that is the glory of God. That is Mother's grace. That is her inside you. Turn towards it with all of your might. Let there be an almighty yes to that. To know that there is no way to understand. You are the understanding in simply being. Just to come to this moment wide open as the emptiness and to feel the felt sense of being. Drink the nectar of your own knowing. Drink the nectar that is flowing in the knowing of being, and let the nectar that is flowing in the knowing of being carry you deeper, deeper into the felt sense of the perfection and the wholeness of what you are. That what we are looking for is not something abstract. It's not like a crazy imagining of the mind, that it is utter simplicity and naturalness. It is the deepest possible relaxation, the relaxation of all thought, all identification, the relaxation of all need and want in the external, into a depth of presence of being here, where there is just an almighty singing silence, the stillness, the peace, the knowing. Fall into yourself. Fall into the felt sense of yourself that is here now. Do not be looking outside. Do not be comparing. Do not be wanting something different. Whatever is here is the grace. Fall into the grace of simply being here. It is never as the mind wants to imagine, but the aliveness of the heart, the knowing of the being, the simplicity of the silent peace that is ever abiding in itself. Here you are, just as you are. The felt sense of silence, the peace, could be the felt sense of the wild aliveness of the longing that feels like such an incredible pull. Sometimes that aliveness, that pull, it feels so big, it feels like it will explode. But what will it explode? It will just explode the idea that it is contained, because it is not contained. The feeling of the expansion, the explosion in the aliveness, it just explodes the myth of separation. Let the aliveness just be so alive and flowing. It is flowing in the infinite field that is boundless. There are no edges. There is nothing for that flow to bump up against. It is flowing within itself, and it is falling in perpetual surrender into itself, in utter devotion, love, loving itself. What else is there for love but to love? And here, everything that is longed for is right here. The love without condition, the peace that is undisturbable, the happiness, the joy that just simply is without cause. Here, the wonder, the awe. Here, the simple surrender again and again of this moment here now, surrenders into this moment here now. And in the simple flow, the felt sense of wholeness, the perfection that nothing can be any other way than this. It is only the mind's meanderings that imagines or wants something different. And in the relaxation of just simply being here, the recognition, this is what is, where there is no movement to resist or attach. This is what is, and what is just simply is. And hear the glory, hear the grace, hear the being simply resting in being. No subject, no object, no duality, just simple oneness. Nothing has changed. Everything is as it has always been. Just the illumination of divine remembering. Oh yes, this. So simple, so natural, so pure and innocent. And this is who you are. This is what you are. Turning again and again to what is longed for. A knocking and a knocking and a knocking until there is the recognition that there is no door, that you have always been. And the sincerity of the longing, the sincerity of the pure heart in divine timing. All appearances of doors and barriers and boundaries and veils just disappear. And the recognition that you have only ever been this same one self that you are now. And hear the oneness with divine essence, the illuminated, radiant heart, ever shining as the self, the felt sense of what you are, the felt sense of true self. You have never ever left yourself, have always been whole and pure and true, immaculate being, have never been anything other than this, just as you are, just as you have always been. When looking in the external shifts to seeing, clear seeing inside the innermost being, the knowing is discovered to be ever alive, ever free, and has always been free. You have always been free.